I've always hated crowds, which is how I ended up working out between 11:30 p.m. and 1 a.m. in a 24-hour gym that felt less like a fitness center and more like a hollow fluorescent aircraft hangar. At that hour, the place had the eerie quiet of a morgue. A few night owl lifters wandered around, headphones in, minds elsewhere. It was perfect until the man in the gray t-shirt appeared. He wasn't remarkable. Average height, average build, average everything. The kind of guy your brain refuses to store a memory of. But he was always there no matter what time I arrived. And he always seemed to be waiting. The first time we spoke was when I needed a spot on the bench press. Everyone else was too far away, so I approached him. He didn't answer verbally, just wiped down a perfectly clean machine with unnerving slowness before nodding and following me. His spotting was fine until the second set. As I strained under the bar, I realized he wasn't watching the weights. He wasn't checking my form. He was staring directly at the space between my eyebrows, completely unblinking, his face blank as a dead screen. I unracked the bar with shaky arms, not from effort, but from the freezing intensity of his stare. He nodded again and walked away. Didn't work out. Didn't stretch. Just sat on a stationary bike, motionless, staring at an empty wall. I tried convincing myself he was harmless, awkward, high, or just socially malfunctioning. But the next time I felt his stare, it was unmistakable. I was on the leg press. Mid-set, the back of my neck prickled like someone was dragging an icicle across it. I lifted my eyes toward the mirror. He wasn't facing me, not directly, but he had angled himself so that his reflection stared into mine. His eyes were wide, bright, and chillingly focused. I froze. He didn't look away, didn't blink. Only when I turned my head physically toward him did he deliberately turn his back and walk to the restroom. That was my cue to leave. Later, when I rushed to my car, I looked back at the gym's glass entrance and froze. He was standing perfectly centered in the doorway, a pitch-black silhouette against the blinding lobby lights, watching me leave, watching my car. That was the night I switched to 6 a.m. workouts. Crowded, noisy, miserable, but safe. For 3 days, I didn't see him. On the fourth morning, I was on the treadmill when that same heavy, pointed stare crawled down my spine. I turned. He was standing by the yoga mats far from the locker room he'd just exited, doing absolutely nothing but scanning the crowd until his eyes locked on mine. The man looked even more wrong in daylight, like a glitch in the flow of human behavior. Everyone moved around him naturally while he remained perfectly still, tracking me with predatory patience. I tried asking the front desk guy if Gray Shirt was a new morning regular. "Never seen him before," he said casually. "He just watching people lift, probably." I wanted to scream. No one understood how abnormal his presence was. I left the gym fast. But when I reached my car, something on the passenger side floor mat sent a cold surge through my chest. A small, perfectly folded white note. I used my towel to pick it up, too scared to touch it. Inside, in neat black block letters, were 3 words. "Your form is off." My car had been locked, my windows tinted. I had thrown my bag onto the passenger seat only after unlocking the door, which meant one thing. He had been inside my car before I got there. That night, I barely slept. I changed passwords, scanned my social media, tried to calm myself. But then I saw a "people you may know" suggestion on Facebook. Jason K., no photo, no info, but 10 mutual friends. All loose acquaintances from a college statistics class 6 years ago. His only profile photo was a close-up of a marker beside a crumpled piece of paper. 3 letters visible. 4. The beginnings of the same note now sitting on my kitchen counter. A cold, nauseating realization formed. He wasn't a random gym stranger. He had found me digitally, possibly through the gym's public Wi-Fi I'd used weeks earlier. And he'd stepped from the digital world into my physical one with terrifying ease. I decided to go back to the gym not to work out, but to confirm something. I made an excuse about losing a water bottle, slipped into the hallway near the locker rooms, and found something horrifyingly revealing: the 24-hour member entry log on a clipboard. I hid in a corner stall and scanned the log. My name showed up at 11:34 p.m. 4 entries later, at 11:37 p.m., was Jason Keller, membership number 77341. The morning I saw him at 6:15 a.m., my name at 6:14. His at 6:15. Coincidence? No. I scanned backward through months of entries. and froze. The very first day I joined the gym, 3 months earlier, my name appeared. Membership number 77340. Directly below it, Jason Keller M. 7341. He had signed up the same minute I had. He hadn't followed me later. He had been behind me from the first moment, a shadow attaching itself to my routine with parasitic precision. The clipboard slipped from my trembling hands, and the locker room door opened. A familiar voice. Low, calm, terrifying. "Hey buddy, everything okay in there?" "Jason." I whispered some lie about tying my shoe. Silence followed, thick, predatory silence. Then, "Your form is off, man. Shouldn't skip leg day." He said it softly, casually, like he'd been watching me yesterday, and the day before, and every day. I didn't answer. I climbed over the divider, burst out of the next stall, sprinted past him, and ran straight out of the gym without looking back. I never returned. I moved out of state 3 months later. New apartment, new job, new gym. I tried to convince myself that distance meant safety, but fear doesn't care about geography, it only cares about memory. And Jason Keller had carved himself into mine like a deep, infected wound. 2 months after relocating, I finally joined another 24-hour gym. I avoided late nights, avoided eye contact with strangers. I never touched public Wi-Fi again. And still, some days I couldn't shake the feeling that if I turned too quickly, I'd see a plain gray shirt standing just behind me. For almost a year, nothing happened. I started sleeping again. I stopped checking the locks 5 times before bed. My life began stitching itself back together. But sometimes, healing is just a lull before the deeper horror resurfaces. It happened on a Thursday evening. I walked into my new gym after work early, crowded, safe. I scanned the room automatically, the way trauma teaches you to. Everyone looked normal, familiar even. I settled into a squat rack near the front desk, comforted by the noise. Halfway through my sets, I felt something. Not a stare, but an absence. A dead spot in the room. A space that felt unnaturally still, like sound refused to exist there. I caught myself glancing toward the corner near the cleaning supplies closet. A man was standing there, not doing anything, not stretching, not even pretending to. He wasn't gray shirt guy. Different build, different posture. But he was too still, too aware. I recognized the behavior before the man, the stillness, the absence of purpose, the predatory patience. My stomach knotted itself. No, stop. You're paranoid. Trauma plays tricks. People stand still all the time. I forced myself to keep working. But the more I moved, the more I sensed it, something watching me with the same cold precision Jason had. Something calculating, something that felt familiar. When I reached for my water bottle, I froze. Someone had moved it. Not far, just turned it slightly. As if someone had picked it up, examined it, placed it back down, rotated exactly 90 degrees. A tiny, deliberate violation. My throat went dry. I scanned the room again, pulse hammering in my temples. The man in the corner was gone. I packed up and left without cooling down. My hands shook so badly I dropped my keys twice. That night I barely slept. Hour after hour I lay awake, staring at my front door, waiting for the handle to turn, waiting for a shadow beneath the crack, waiting for the whisper, "Your form is off." But nothing happened. 3 days later, I found out why. I walked to my car Saturday morning, juggling my gym bag and a cup of coffee. When I opened the driver's door, something slid off the dashboard and landed in my lap. A folded note, perfectly square, perfectly white. I didn't want to open it. Every cell in my body screamed not to. But I forced my fingers to peel it apart. 3 words, same handwriting. "You moved far." My legs almost buckled. I scanned the empty parking lot, heart pounding so violently I could hear it echoing in my ears. Nothing. No cars running. No windows cracked open. No footsteps. He had been here. He knew where I lived. He knew where I parked. He knew I was trying to escape him. I slammed the car door shut and drove straight to the police station. I didn't care how insane I sounded, but after 2 hours of paperwork, the officer gave me the same dead-eyed answer I'd heard before. No evidence of a break-in. Could have been a prank. A prank. A note left inside a locked car by a man whose real identity didn't even exist in the system. I switched gyms again. I changed my car locks. I installed cameras inside and outside my apartment. Weeks passed, then months. No notes, no sightings. And eventually, foolishly, I assumed he'd grown bored. Maybe he'd moved on to another victim. Maybe the chase had lost its thrill once I fled. But the truth came back into my life on a silent Tuesday night. I was cleaning my apartment when my phone buzzed, an unknown number texting me for the first time since I changed phones after moving. I hesitated, then opened it. A single photo. Dark, blurry, but the shapes were unmistakable. It was the inside of my gym, taken that day, from behind a weight machine, the spot where someone could watch me without being seen. Below the photo was a message. "Your form is better." I dropped my phone. The sound startled my dog, who started barking at the door deep. Frantic growls. I'd never heard from him before. I forced myself to look out the peephole. Nothing, just a quiet hallway. But the barking continued, louder, more desperate, directed at the window now. When I pulled the curtains aside, my blood turned to ice. Across the parking lot, illuminated by a flickering streetlight, was the silhouette of a man. Gray shirt, dark pants, standing perfectly still, watching my apartment. I backed away slowly. My dog growled beside me, hackles raised. I grabbed my phone to call the police, but another message appeared on the lock screen before I could dial. Good footwork. Footwork. I hadn't done legs that day, but he knew I planned to. He had been close enough to see my routine, maybe close enough to hear my breathing. I didn't sleep that night, or the night after. The police did a drive-by, but never found him. Maybe he left as soon as he saw my lights turn on. Maybe he was still nearby, hiding, watching for a moment when cameras weren't pointed in the right direction. Every day since then, I've moved through life with the awareness that a shadow is stitched to me, a quiet, patient thing with a gray shirt and dead, hungry eyes. He doesn't contact me often, but when he does, it's never random. It's always after I start to feel safe. Always after I slack, just a little, in my vigilance. He taught me something I never wanted to learn. There are predators who don't chase. They don't attack. They just follow. They watch until your routines become their routines, until your life fits neatly into the shape of their obsession. And they never stop training. Sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night with that old, familiar sensation, a cold, heavy stare pressing between my shoulder blades. I look into the dark corners of my apartment, half expecting him to step forward. And every time one thought freezes my blood. What if he's not finished correcting my form? The second gym I tried was a small, high-end, independent place. The kind with polished wood floors and a smell of citrus and disinfectant instead of stale sweat. I joined a few months after moving to the new city. I was still jumpy, but the small, curated community and the higher price tag made it feel safer. Everything was transparent. Everything was clean. This gym had a special feature I loved: a soundproof, glass-walled room on the second floor used for private coaching sessions, which they called the booth. The booth was my sanctuary. It had a single squat rack, a bench, and a mirror wall. When I could get the reservation, I would bring my own heavy speaker, lock the door, and blast my music. The glass walls let me see the whole floor below, but the soundproofing meant I was in my own silent world. A few months in, the gym changed management. The old owner, a friendly middle-aged woman, sold out to a corporation that owned a chain of smaller studios. With the new ownership came new rules, new technology, and a new vibe that slowly began to strip the place of its personal charm. The first major change was the installation of a new, complex security system. The old system used a simple keycard. The new one required a fingerprint scan and a 6-digit personal code. They also started installing small, high-definition cameras everywhere, justifying it as a necessary liability precaution. In my state of high anxiety from the Jason Keller incident, I actually appreciated the visible cameras. If something happened, there would be a record. One day, I had the booth reserved for a heavy shoulder and back workout. I walked in, locked the door, and set up my speaker. As I was wiping down the bench, I noticed something new. In the corner, near the ceiling, was a small, black, dome-shaped object, a new camera. I hadn't seen it before. It was the same type they had installed on the main floor, small and discreet. I felt a flash of irritation. I liked the privacy of the booth, but then I shrugged. It's a gym, not a changing room. I'd signed the new liability waiver. I turned on my speaker, the bass thumping against the glass. locked my phone in my duffel bag, and started my workout. I was mid-set on the overhead press, my face contorted with effort, when my music abruptly cut out. Silence hit the room like a physical shockwave, a deafening absence of sound. I stopped, annoyed. My phone was locked in the bag. The speaker must have disconnected. I walked over to the speaker, a heavy, Bluetooth-enabled block. The lights were on, but the connection light was blinking rapidly, searching for a signal. I unlocked my bag and grabbed my phone. It showed the speaker was connected. I tried turning the volume up. Nothing happened. I tried skipping the song. Still nothing. The phone thought it was playing music, but the speaker was utterly silent, except for that searching blink. I decided to just plug in my wired headphones to my phone. I reached for the cable in the bag. As my hand closed around the cable, a sound suddenly cut through the silence of the room. It was faint, tinny, and slightly distorted. I listened carefully. It was a voice, a man's voice, and it sounded like it was coming from the speaker. I slowly stood up straight, my pulse jumping into my throat. The connection light on the speaker was still blinking rapidly. The voice was clearer now, a deep, measured monotone, completely devoid of inflection, like a text-to-speech AI program, but recognizably human. Your left shoulder is compensating. Adjust your grip. I dropped the headphone cable. I stared at the speaker, then up at the new camera in the corner. The voice had come through the speaker that my phone thought it was connected to. I backed up until my shoulders hit the mirror wall. The voice spoke again, quieter this time, a subtle echo. Are you going to comply with the instruction? I felt a wave of icy nausea. This wasn't the trainer's voice. This wasn't the front desk. This was coming from inside the booth. I looked out the glass walls. The floor below was busy, but everyone was in their own world. No one was looking up. Who is this? I managed to croak out, my voice sounding thin and small in the sudden silence. A small, high-pitched click came from the speaker. Then the voice again, calm as ice. The gym manager is monitoring the security system. Your form is deteriorating. Please adjust your grip and finish your set. My mind raced. The gym manager, new management, new security system, a two-way audio feed through the new cameras. He wasn't just watching me. He could speak to me. He was using the security system to coach, or more accurately, to control me. I wanted to scream, but the sheer clinical professionalism of the voice stopped me. It was too matter-of-fact. It was a complete violation, but he was framing it as management monitoring. I felt the wave of intense, irrational fear again. This man, whoever he was, had the power to watch me in a soundproof room and communicate with me directly, without anyone else in the building knowing. The glass walls, which were supposed to make me feel safe by allowing me to see out, now made me feel like an exhibit in a museum. I walked toward the speaker and slowly, deliberately, knelt down, reached for the power button, and pressed it. The lights instantly went dead. The silence returned. But a moment later, a different sound cut in. It was a soft, sibilant hissing sound, like static, coming from the ceiling. I looked up. The small, dome-shaped camera in the corner was glowing with a faint, almost invisible red light. And from that camera, the voice cut through again. Sharper, louder, and angrier this time. You are not permitted to interfere with the equipment. You have been warned. I scrambled to my feet, grabbed my phone, and ran to the door. I fumbled with the complex electronic lock, fingers slippery with sweat. It took 3 agonizing attempts to key in the 6-digit code. On the third try, the green light flashed. I yanked the door open and burst out onto the 2nd-floor hallway, not even bothering to look back. I ran down the stairs, heart hammering a desperate rhythm against my ribs. I went straight to the front desk. The attendant, a young, friendly woman named Sarah, was folding towels. "Sarah, I need to speak to the manager." Now, the person monitoring the booth system, they spoke to me through the speaker system and the camera. Sarah looked genuinely perplexed. "I'm sorry. The manager's name is Mr. Chen. He's on a conference call in the back, but there's no speaker system in the booth, just the squat rack and the bench." "No, I mean the camera," I insisted, pointing upstairs. "They can talk through the new cameras." I unplugged my speaker, and the voice came from the camera. Sarah laughed nervously. "Sir, those are just HD security cameras. They're for recording. They don't have microphones, and they certainly don't have speakers. Only the front entrance has a two-way intercom." skeptic. Her dismissal was instant and total. She saw me as a panicked, delusional member. "Please, just call the manager," I pleaded. Sarah sighed and picked up the internal phone. After a minute of hushed conversation, she hung up. "Mr. Chen is tied up. He said he'll call you later. He also said that only he has access to the security feed, and he hasn't been monitoring it. He thinks there must be a mistake with your equipment." I felt the familiar cold dread returning. This was the same denial I'd faced before. The violation was so subtle, so easily dismissed, that I sounded insane trying to explain it. I walked out feeling like the air had been sucked out of the room. I drove home and decided to do what I knew best: investigate my own violation. I was now a calm thinker focused on survival. I sat down at my computer and started researching the model of the new dome cameras I'd seen in the gym. It was a high-end, commercial-grade IP camera. I found the specs. The technical manual explicitly stated that the base model did not have a speaker. But then, I saw a small section at the bottom of a third-party review page. It mentioned an optional accessory module, a small attachable sound package that included a high-sensitivity microphone and a tiny, directional speaker, all designed to fit seamlessly into the dome casing for unattended perimeter security and immediate personnel notification. The manager, Mr. Chen, was either lying or he was completely ignorant. The camera could talk. Someone had installed the optional module and was using it. But the most disturbing part was the phone call that followed. An hour later, my phone rang. The display showed a blocked, private number. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello, this is my name." A man's voice, deep and perfectly level, came through the line. It was the same voice I'd heard in the booth. "This is Mr. Chen, the manager of the facility. Mr. Chen, I'm calling about the incident in the booth. Your security system is speaking to your members, and you need to. I understand your concerns." He cut in, his voice a smooth, impenetrable wall. I reviewed the logs after Sarah's call. The logs show an error in the system's ambient feedback loop, which can sometimes produce a static sound. "I assure you, no one spoke to you." "That's a lie," I stated, my voice shaking with frustration and fear. "I heard a specific instruction. Your left shoulder is compensating. Adjust your grip." "That's not a static error. That's a live communication." A pause. A significant, heavy, 6-second pause. Then, Mr. Chen's voice came back. Lower now, but with the same unnatural calmness. "I see. I apologize for the initial misdirection. It seems one of our technicians was remotely testing the optional audio module on camera 3 at the precise moment you were exercising. A complete technical oversight. We are looking into disciplinary action." He continued, his voice taking on a strangely sympathetic, yet cold, tone. "It must have been quite a shock, especially after your previous experience. The one with the gray t-shirt guy, Jason Keller." My blood ran cold, instantly wiping away all my anger. The speaker on my end was dead silent. I could only hear my own ragged breathing. How do you know that name?" I whispered. "We run a comprehensive security check on all new high-end members," Mr. Chen replied smoothly. "Our system detected an unusual gap in your gym memberships between your old location and our current facility. We noticed you had terminated your previous membership the morning after a security incident was reported a stolen item from a vehicle, a note left, and a subsequent police inquiry. The individual involved was named Jason Keller. It's all on your file." I felt faint. This wasn't new management. This was a complete psychological dossier. He wasn't just the gym manager. He was a gatekeeper who had profiled me, known my deepest fear, and then used the gym's technology to bring that fear back to life. "I need to terminate my membership immediately," I said, my voice barely audible. "Of course," Mr. Chen said immediately, not even trying to persuade me to stay. "We will have your final paperwork ready for you. But before you go, may I offer a piece of advice? From one person who understands true focus to another." I didn't want to hear it, but I couldn't hang up. "What?" "Don't worry about Jason Keller anymore," he said, the inflection on the name sounding almost bored. "He only watches the people who are interesting, the ones who can be improved. Once they leave, once they run, they cease to be a challenge. They are no longer part of the project." The line clicked dead. The tone was professional, final, and absolutely chilling. He was telling me that my fear, my flight, had been the only thing that had saved me from Keller, and now I was being released from his program. I sat there, staring at the phone, realizing the terrifying implication of his final words. My old stalker, Jason Keller, was not a random psycho. He was a student, a tester, or maybe even a peer of this new manager, Mr. Chen. The surveillance was systematic, organized, and focused on finding people who could be improved or psychologically broken. By the time I walked into that old community center gym, I wasn't just physically weak, I was mentally butchered. The stalking, the paranoia, the slow erosion of normal life. It all left me skittish and hollowed out. My doctor recommended somewhere. Simple, public, human. No tech, no Wi-Fi, no digital ghosts. So I chose a converted YMCA basement gym. The kind of place where the paint peeled with age, and the weights were held together by stubbornness and rust. It was the opposite of my past nightmare gyms. No tracking systems, no fancy machines, no quiet corners for surveillance freaks. Just retirees, teenagers, and the occasional overworked parent trying to keep their body moving. And for the first time in a long time, I felt almost safe. After a month, my routine returned. I stuck to the front half of the gym, where the lights worked and the machines weren't tucked into ominous corners. The back free weight room was separated by a dark stone archway, with one sad fluorescent bulb that flickered like it was dying of exhaustion. I avoided that room religiously, but one day I needed the hack squat machine, and the hack squat lived right at the edge of the darkness. The moment I stepped under that archway, I regretted it. The air was heavy. Dust motes hung like they were frozen midair. Even the light itself seemed thinner, more like a suggestion than actual illumination. I checked the bulb. It was on, but the room still felt dim, as if the shadows were eating the light faster than it could produce it. I got under the bar and started my sets. By set 4, sweat dripped down my forehead, and I kept catching myself, glancing into the mirror ahead of me, mostly to make sure I wasn't alone. That's when I saw him, a large man, standing halfway inside the archway, completely motionless, wearing a gray sweatshirt and dark pants. His face was swallowed by the shadows. He wasn't stretching, didn't look like he was waiting for the machine. He was just standing, watching me. I paused mid-set, pulling out an earbud. "Hey man, you waiting for this?" No reaction. 5 seconds. Nothing. "All right, just one more." His presence felt wrong. He wasn't just watching. He was absorbing the room, like a living sinkhole for attention. As I started my final rep, I heard a sound from deep inside the back corner of the room. Slow, rhythmic, padded. Not weights hitting the ground. Not footsteps. More like something, or someone gently striking a wall. I re-racked the weight, wiped my palms on my shorts, and walked toward the archway. The man didn't move, didn't turn, didn't breathe loudly enough to be heard. "Hey, what's that noise?" I asked. He lifted one arm, slowly, mechanically, then pointed deeper into the dark room with a rigid, unnatural stillness. I followed his gesture, squinting. I could barely make out some old boxes and discarded gym mats. The rhythm continued. I turned back to ask him another question. He was gone, not walking away, not fading into the room. Gone. The massive man had vanished without a single sound in a room with only one exit. I backed up fast. By the time I got to the front desk, my nerves were shredded. Kevin, the scrawny teenage attendant, was tapping on his phone. "Dude," I said, "is anyone working in the free weight room back there? I swear someone was in there and there's this weird rhythmic noise." Kevin froze like I just told him the devil was in the sauna. "Nobody uses the back room after 2 p.m., he said quietly. "Air conditioning's busted. Lights busted. I locked it myself earlier." "No," I insisted. "Someone was in there. Big guy in a gray sweatshirt." The color drained from his face. He swallowed. "You're not supposed to go back there alone. Look, something happened in that room a few months ago." The air got heavier. A personal trainer, Sal, was spotting an older woman. Deadlifts. Bad form. She collapsed. The bar crushed her neck. She died instantly. A chill shot up my spine. "It happened right where you're talking about," he said. "Right where you heard that sound." My hands tightened around the counter. What does that have to do with the man I saw? Kevin hesitated, then lowered his voice. Sal was fired. He blamed himself. He used to stand in that archway for hours, staring at the spot where it happened. He wore this ratty gray sweatshirt all the time. Big guy. Built. But ever since the accident, something's been off about him. Some people said he started hurting himself, pushing his back against the brick wall until it bruised. A cold, terrible clarity hit me. The rhythm. Self-inflicted punishment. I wanted to write it off as a fragile man unraveling under guilt. It was human horror, awful, but logical. It didn't feel targeted. It didn't feel like my nightmare had returned. For 2 weeks, I avoided the back room entirely. But the universe, or something worse, wasn't done with me yet. One afternoon, during leg extensions, I felt the room's temperature drop. I turned toward the archway. He was there again. Same clothing, same stillness, same unnatural focus. And the rhythmic thumping had returned. Only this time, I wasn't afraid. I felt something closer to pity. This was a man drowning in his own guilt. I stood, removed my headphones, and walked toward him. "Sal?" I asked softly. "Are you okay?" He didn't move, didn't answer. Only raised one hand again, slow, deliberate, and reached behind his own neck. Then, with a sudden, sickening rip, he tore his gray sweatshirt off his body. The sight beneath it froze me in place. His back was a grotesque canvas of horizontal, bruised lines, hundreds of them dark red and purple, overlapping like the imprint of a steel bar. The deadlift bar, the instrument of the woman's death. My heartbeat sounded like gunshots in my ears, and suddenly, the thumping made complete, horrifying sense. He wasn't haunted by the accident. He was recreating it. On himself. I stepped backward slowly. The man stopped his ritual. His spine straightened. His head turned, just enough for me to see the ghost of a man who wasn't living anymore, just existing inside a cage of his own making. When he finally spoke, his voice was a scraped whisper. It wasn't the weight that killed her. I swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" His trembling finger rose again and pointed directly at the floor between my feet. "I wasn't looking at her," he rasped. "I was watching the man in the corner." "The man? In the archway?" I whispered. He shook his head, slow and hollow. "No, the man behind him. The one who told me to push." A cold, electric terror shot through my blood. This wasn't guilt. This wasn't madness. This was familiar. Tu familiar. His words hung in the air like a noose. The man behind him. Not the woman he was supposed to save. Not the lifter he was coaching. A man he claimed only he could see standing in the corner, watching, whispering. My chest tightened. My breath went shallow. This wasn't just guilt. This wasn't hallucination. It was something I had felt before, something cold and calculating. Something that watched you until you forgot what it felt like to be alone. "Who was he?" I whispered. Sal didn't turn, didn't move. He stood there, trembling, his fingers still pointed at the empty space between my feet like there was an invisible stain only he could see. He looked average," Sal croaked. "Plain clothes, plain face, just a neutral man. Un neutral man." My stomach dropped. I knew that description. I lived in the wake of it. The air in the room felt suddenly wrong, heavy, thick, like something was standing behind me, over my shoulder, watching me the way the gray-shirt man used to watch me in the mirror. I took another step back. "Why are you pointing at the floor?" I asked, my voice cracking. Sal finally dropped his hand. His shoulders slumped like a puppet whose strings had been cut. "Because that's where she fell," he whispered. And I didn't stop it. I didn't move, because he told me to watch. His voice fractured mid-sentence, like something inside him broke open. I wasn't supposed to help her. I was supposed to observe. He told me to push her, to get her form perfect. And when she collapsed, he just stood there. He didn't move, didn't react. I thought. Sal paused, shivered. I thought he was a reflection. But when I turned around, he was gone. A quiet, rhythmic sound began again behind us. Except it wasn't coming from the wall this time. It was coming from the far corner of the room, deeper in the dark, where the shadows were thickest, where the fluorescent light refused to reach, where the machines looked like melted skeletons in the gloom. Sal's head snapped toward the sound. His breathing hitched. He stumbled backward, blindfold slipping over his eyes as he tightened it with trembling hands. "No," he whispered. "Don't look. Don't let him catch your eyes. Don't look at the corners. That's where he waits." My blood felt like ice water. "What's in the corner, Sal?" He shook his head violently. "Don't ask. Don't look. He only comes when someone is weak, when someone's routine breaks. He finds the ones who push themselves, the ones alone, the ones who listen." I took another step toward him, but he stepped away fast, desperate into the darkness. The fluorescent bulb flickered overhead, stuttering like it was suffocating. And with each flicker, his silhouette appeared farther and farther back in the room, until eventually it disappeared completely behind an unused leg press machine. The thumping stopped. Dead silence. I felt exposed, like something was tracing every tiny movement I made. I turned and ran. I didn't stop until I reached the YMCA lobby, breathless, legs shaking. Kevin looked up in alarm. "Dude, what happened?" I couldn't even form words. I just grabbed my things and left. I never stepped into that building again. I didn't warn anyone, didn't file a report, didn't talk to Kevin. I just abandoned the gym like it had been infected with something parasitic. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't a haunting. It was a pattern, a system, a method. The man in the corner didn't belong to this gym. He belonged to me, and to Sal, and probably to anyone unlucky enough to fall into his quiet, obsessive orbit. He wasn't a ghost. He wasn't a hallucination. He wasn't even tied to one place. He was a watcher, a hunter, someone who inserted himself into people's routines, attached himself quietly, and waited for the right moment to push. He destroyed Sal in one terrible moment. He destroyed me over months of calculated, suffocating observation. And now, he was somewhere else, watching someone new, waiting for a moment to say the same thing he said to me. "Your form is off." Months passed. I moved again. New city, new job, no gyms, no predictable routines. I exercised outside, in broad daylight, always changing my routes. I kept my digital footprint non-existent. No social media, no Wi-Fi, no patterns. But paranoia doesn't die, it just adapts. Sometimes when I run, my reflection appears unexpectedly in a shop window, and for a split second, I swear there's another shape behind me. A neutral face, plain clothes, a figure whose eyes don't blink. Sometimes I feel that cold, heavy pressure on the back of my neck, like someone is staring at a single patch of skin right between my shoulder blades, measuring it, studying it. And some nights, when I'm lying awake in the dark, the world silent around me, I hear it again in my head. The rhythm of guilt, the rhythm of punishment, the rhythm of someone pushing another human being to the brink. Other nights, it's not the thumping that keeps me awake. It's the memory of that quiet, flat voice behind a gym mirror, behind a locker door, behind the seat of my locked car. A voice that never shouted, never threatened, never lost patience. Just watched and whispered, "Your form is off." Because maybe he wasn't haunting the gym. Maybe he was training. Maybe he still is. Maybe he's out there right now, standing just out of sight, in the corner of someone else's life, waiting for their form to break, waiting for the moment he can step forward and whisper those three simple words that are somehow more terrifying than a scream. Your form is off. And I know, with a cold certainty I'll carry forever, that if I slip, if I become predictable again, if I let my guard drop, he'll find me. He always does.